Keith Barrington Pace, and I'm a train driver. My childhood was not the best. I was adopted, and there were four of us, four children. I was the youngest. Unfortunately, my mother had, I would call it bipolar these days, but she was highly volatile, and life wasn't too good. When I was 14, I left the house, and I think my father had left about 15 minutes before. He used to run a youth club, and he'd come back and gone straight out. And I followed up the road. I had a message to give to him en route, which was on the way to where I was going at church. And there's somebody over the road. It was dark, it was at night, and there was a guy lying on the floor. And I went over and I got a huge shock, because it was my father. He'd had a massive heart attack, which I didn't know at the time. And we went straight to the hospital, and he died en route. He probably died on the floor, actually, where he was. And this was a huge shock, because I loved my father greatly, but just did not like my mother. And I started to suffer blackouts. School suffered. The whole thing was pretty painful. Yeah, and I think that sort of shaped where I went from there. And I thought, yep, I can get out of the situation I'm in by joining the army. It turned me into a man. Within 6 months, I was serving in Northern Ireland in pretty hard days. So, yeah, that changes you and hardens you up a bit. Early days in the army, I was serving in Gibraltar. I met my wife, and she was older than me. She was very similar to my mother, and it was the start, if you like, of a very volatile relationship, very abusive. I used to put up with it. I used to be away as much as I could be. We had two lovely boys, and a lot of their early years I was away. And that kept the relationship together for 21 years. And during that time I served right around the world, and that's when I came to get a relationship with Jesus. I'd just come back from a tour. It was probably my 8th or 9th tour in Northern Ireland, and a lot had happened. I'd been shot, blown up. We'd lost one of our colleagues. I really realized on a number of occasions that I really shouldn't be here, and that God was looking over and protecting me. I had a complete personal, tangible moment with Jesus, and I was running through a wood, and I remember it like it was yesterday, and suddenly there was Jesus running beside me. Now, it was like having a conversation with someone who was there, but they weren't physically be able to be touched. And there was a huge message that I am here. I've always been here, and I always will be here. While everything outside of the marriage was improving, my marriage was unraveling rapidly. I wasn't sleeping, and I was keeping it all to myself. And in the end, I made a decision, whether it was right or wrong, as I felt at the time, that I had to go. I moved away from God for a while. I knew He was there. I still believed in Him. My relationship, I just didn't feel worthy to go to church, to mix in the community. That was the worst moment, I think, of my life at that time. So the house I had up north in England, I rented it out and moved in a policewoman. I thought that's a safe bet, and that policewoman happens to be my wife. She asked me to go for a cup of coffee one day. I discovered that this girl had also been abused as a child. She had such similarities through all her childhood. She'd also been adopted out and eventually came back to her family. I'd obviously done the same. To us, it was a moment where God put two people together and joined them and healed all those wounds. And he made it okay that we'd had relationships before. Wisdom to me is the place I have reached where now I can sit down and talk to people on so many different subjects that are difficult to speak about, and to help to bring them not only to an understanding of what they've been through, but also to lead them in a life that is Christ-like.